Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
So welcome to the 11th Coffee with Mom.
I think it's remarkable that you can keep track of that.
Well, I just go on the YouTube channel, look
it up before you
what-
come. Before you come for it. Well, that makes sense, I guess.
Because I have like 100 and I don't know how many videos I've got on my YouTube
goodness.
channel. So
yeah, a lot.
Between all the gaming and then the vlog and then Coffee with Mom and some of the other things I've been playing around with.
Yeah, you have quite a bit.
Yeah, so I have to look. So especially since I put the number on the thumbnail for the the video, so I have to put. I don't want to have 47 number sixes. So we've got our coffee.
Yes.
We went to Starbucks and it was crazy busy.
Oh, the line was ridiculous.
Yeah.
No way.
There was, what, 20 people in line?
Oh, at least.
Yeah. So we came down to our local place down here. But the topic of this 11th Coffee with Mom is today is Matt's birthday. Her stepson, my half-brother, and you can go up here on the card here on the video and see all about what happened to Matt at Christmas time last year. But we've decided that here on his birthday we are going to reminisce and talk about some stories that we've had with Matt, but not all three of us, so not Matt, Mom, and me, but basically stories between Matt and me that maybe Mom doesn't know or doesn't remember
or doesn't really care to know.
And same thing then with Mom of stories and stuff that either I don't remember or I wasn't with them or something like that. So that's what we have decided to do here. So Mom, would you like to take the first story?
Well,
do you need your hands, or is that why you're putting the coffee down?
That coffee is hot, and so I can't just
What?
hold it.
Pour it. Maybe we can sue. Pour it on your
Pour it on my leg.
Pour it on your leg.
Okay, a story about Matt. Well, I got to thinking when we talked about this, and I got to thinking, and there's several little stories. We were talking the other day, just you and I, about how Matt taught you how to drink out of a straw, and it was an exciting time. And the other thing about Matt, Matt was never little. I think he weighed almost 9 pounds, or he may have weighed over 9 pounds when he was born.
Right.
So he was always a big guy.
He was a big guy.
And
Yes, he was.
And there were some negatives to that too, because he didn't like to walk. His legs were heavy, and until he kind of grew into his stature, his legs were pretty fat, and so he didn't like to walk, and he always wanted to be carried. Of course, I didn't want to carry him because I wasn't that big myself. I was pretty thin and little back in those days, believe it or not. But anyway, the reason why I'm saying all that is because one of the stories that I got to thinking about, remember how after Thanksgiving, for several years, it became kind of a standard thing that after Thanksgiving we would go to San Antonio to the Riverwalk to see the Christmas lights turn on, because that was a big to do in San Antonio, and we'd stay in a hotel and whatnot. And I remember that one time we went, and that was the last time we went with the both of you boys. And you were teenagers, and it was so crowded, and so Matt said, "Okay, Sue."
I think I know where the story's going because
And he said, "You just hang on to my belt loops." And so I got behind Matt, looped my fingers on his belt loops on his pants, and he just stormed through the crowd. He was just kind of like a breaker, and he just went right through them. And here I was right behind him with hanging on to his pants. I thought, well, I've got a bodyguard, that's for sure. That was kind of cool. We did that several years in a row until you guys got too big to enjoy it anymore. You didn't like going with us, I don't think. And one thing I just now thought about, I don't think, we never really did much overseas traveling with Matt. I mean, like Kurt and I.
Well, yeah, because Matt was,
It was like we went on trips, but it was never like overseas or anything, which I don't know why that was.
Well, I think it's their relationship, I would guess. Dad and Matt, or Matt just didn't want to. I mean, that goes to the quick story about when we went to the. This is gonna sound horrible, people, to some of you, but Dad took us helicopter fishing, and I think I've actually put pictures of that on previous Coffee with Moms.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, Matt didn't go because he was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna stay back with my girlfriend, and we're gonna go hunt for arrowheads."
Yes, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yes, I do.
So I think he just.
Well, that was much later.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing I'll have to say that I'm thankful to Matt for is his decisions made a lot of opportunities for me.
Well, that's true.
Because I was 4 years younger, and so then when he was 18 or 16 or whatever, then the math works out because clearly Dad would get things in his head to do things, right? And he wanted to do things with Matt, so he would usually make a lot of times, I think, the first offer to Matt, "Hey, you want to do this?" Like a car, right?
Yes.
Remember, and it was all, that story was, I remember where it was, "Hey, I was thinking about getting you a car. You can learn to fix it up. You can learn about cars and all this," when he was like, 17 or 18. And Matt's like, "Nah, I don't want to do that." And of course, then Dad's like, "Hey, Mike, you want a car and you can learn to work on it?" And I was 14. And I'm like, 14 and have a car that I can't drive for 2 years, but I could have And so then I was like, yeah.
Yeah, he drove somewhere. He flew somewhere and drove the car back.
St. Louis.
St. Louis,
It was
was
St.
it?
Louis. Yeah, I remember it was St. Louis that he. Yeah.
442.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But speaking of bodyguards, and so while I have this in my. So along those lines, so you were there on the trip, but you weren't privy to the actual event, and that was the whole Hawaii fight.
Oh, that's right.
Because that was a bodyguard situation, not just to me, but to also all the other people that were there on the beach. And so that story is so that we had a family trip to Hawaii, and Matt and I, we kind of just basically really enjoyed body surfing, and there was this one beach called Disappearing Sands Beach on the Big Island, Hawaii, and so we went there several times, and I think the second time or whatever, we were like, "Hey, we want to go back to that beach while we're on the trip." And so Matt and I are there surfing, and there's a bunch of a bunch of tourists, right? And so we're all basically body surfing, and we're not doing any type of like crazy surfing, right? We're just literally catching a wave and going straight, put our hands, just having just like a novice, right, would completely do.
Uh-huh.
But there was this one local Hawaiian guy that was on a boogie board, and so he was literally cutting across the wave, and he did not care if he ran over people, if he hit people, because he would basically just skip right over over us, because we were all just swimming.
Well, yeah.
Well, eventually Matt took offense to that, which we all were, talking about it when we're swimming. And so when the guy came across the wave one time, Matt just planted his feet and took him right off his boogie board. And the guy goes, "Okay, come on." And Matt's like, "Okay." And Matt was actually about my height, so he was 6'2", but he was probably normally he was 60 pounds, 70 pounds, just bigger in girth, legs, arms, everything.
Yeah, he was a big guy. He was
and just powerful. Powerful, naturally
a big
powerful.
Old teddy bear.
Yeah. And so the guy's like, "Come on, let's go to the beach." So Matt's like, "Okay." And Matt, I'm watching because I'm the little brother, and Matt just looks at the guy and goes, "You might as well punch me once, because that's all you're gonna get." And the guy punched Matt, and the grunt that Matt created from that was not a grunt of pain. It was a grunt of, now I'm actually going to have to kill another human. That's really what the grunt was.
Oh my
I mean, because
goodness,
the
yeah.
look in his eyes and all that. So Matt, the guy made a mistake in the whole story, and the mistake that the guy made was he didn't keep it a fight. Matt literally just grappled the guy, put all of his whatever 300 pounds or whatever, 208, whatever he weighed back in those days, and basically just was grappling the guy on the ground. The guy had no, and all I could see was an elbow. Up and down. This one other guy came over and was like, "Hey guys," and the grunt, Matt did the grunt again by looking at this other guy who was trying to tell him to stop, and that guy just backed up. Of course, eventually, once the cop showed up and separated the two, this other big guy, because it was another big guy, was actually a 16-year-old kid.
Oh wow.
And Matt's like, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
Well, the cops ran the kid, and the cops were looking for that kid for like a breaking and entering.
Oh.
So they took the kid away, and Matt's like, whew, I dodged a bullet, because Matt was 20, I think, at the time. So he's literally beating up a minor. And so, but that was, a bodyguard. Matt's done that, several times. So your whole belt loop story with Matt, I mean, that's...
Yeah, he was very protective.
Yes, he was. So.
Yeah. And then I remember a couple others. One of the, he was really very. When you were born, he liked to. We would let him hold you, but he'd have to sit down. We wouldn't let him walk around with you.
Right.
And he liked sitting on the couch and just holding you in his arms. It was, and so I would work around the house, and there'd be Matt sitting there on the couch with you. One time, I don't know how it was discovered, but Matt had a balloon, and he tossed that balloon up in the air, and you thought that was the funniest thing you had ever seen. You were just a little baby, probably not, maybe a year old, I don't know.
Right.
But you would do those big belly laughs. Every time he'd pop that balloon up in the air, and you'd let out one of these big old belly laughs. It was so funny. And of course, then Matt thought that was great. He was making you laugh and stuff, and so he wanted to do that all the time.
Of course, so you reminiscing about stories, then reminiscing me about stories. And I know one of the things I said was, we'll try to tell stories that maybe we both don't know, but that's going to be hard, because obviously this is a happy day to remember. But that reminds me of the laugh that Matt and I had when when I wanted burgers and Dad made the green horse shit casserole.
Oh my gosh.
And Matt and I at the dinner table, we just looked at each other and we would just start laughing. I mean, it was and I got Dad so pissed.
He was so mad.
He was so, I fucking work all the time. Like, dude, this is like green fresh horse shit. That's what it looked like.
Now the dog wouldn't even eat it. Was so bad. It was.
And Matt and I, we would be like, you guys were like, guys, and Matt and I would do like,
every time we said something, it got you going.
I know, we just look across the table at each other and just start laughing.
You did that a couple times. I'm trying to remember another time when you did that, but I don't know. You guys kind of had an unspoken thing about that.
And I think it had somewhat to do that we were half brothers, right? So we didn't spend every waking moment growing up, and then together we were so somewhat different.
That was one of the things that Matt had told me one time when we were talking about, his coming back and forth when he was little, visiting us,
right?
Because he stayed with his mother, and then he would come, on holidays and summers would come and visit, but. The bad thing about that, he told me, was that he never had any friends. He didn't make any friends in Maryland because he'd have to leave them to come visit us. And then he didn't make friends with us because he had to leave them and go back to Maryland. And it made sense.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe that's why he was such a private person. Or not why, but contributed to it.
To the whole thought.
Yeah. I know... all the stories that I would been thinking of, and of course you are aware of them because we've talked about them before.
Right.
But I like the one about two things with Grandma Kovacs, because she would, when you were little, she's the one who sort of kept an eye on Matt and would bring him to visit. He'd go to her house, and then she would bring him to us.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And they were in the car, and Matt wanted some chewing gum. And I can't remember exactly now, but anyway, so he gets some chewing gum, and Grandma says, "Can I have some chewing gum too, Matt?" And he takes a piece of gum, and he breaks off the teeniest, tiniest piece of gum that could be broken off from it, and gave it to her.
That became a thing in the family too, because we would do that. Oh, you want a piece?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and
yeah.
I mean, and when she didn't ask for a stick of gum,
Mm-hmm.
she asked for a piece of gum, and he gave her a piece of gum. He wasn't going to give away his gum.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just was it. But and then that time that they were in the car together, and Matt's going on and on and on, telling some kind of a story, and Grandma Kovacs is only paying half attention because she's driving and thinking about, I think that was right after you were born, and she was bringing you to the house, and I had just come home with you. And so anyway, he tells her this story, and so he gets all done, and then he says, "Okay, Grandma, now you tell it back to me." It was like, duh.
Yeah.
I wasn't even listening.
Yeah.
But
Well, another story, and you were there, but you might not remember it. But I remember that, of course, there was our canoe story, but that's our story. But then there was the whole where we had a raft, the whitewater raft. Remember that Dad bought, and we did a trip up into maybe Colorado or somewhere.
yes, I remember.
All four of them. But then I remember rafting, and I remember that Dad had brought at least one. I think it was just one. It might have actually, no, it must have been two because of the story. So several fishing poles, so we could
Okay.
raft, and then we could fish as we rafted down the river. And this might have been like a I can't remember where it was. I just remember, because I vividly remember Matt, and I remember Matt's like straddling, the raft, and he's got one leg in the water and all that, and he's casting and catching a fish and bringing it in, and the rest of us, at least me being the younger brother, I am not catching shit. And I remember Matt just going, "Do you want me to touch your pole?"
I do remember that. Yes, yeah, he was.
He was very reminiscent of Eddie, of June's Eddie, because when he would be funny or say something, it was actually sometimes pretty either real hilarious or profound,
Yeah,
or whatever it was.
Very much to the point.
Yeah, so it was.
Yeah, shut me, want me to touch your pole.
It's like, screw you, you son of a Yep.
But he had no patience, whether it was fishing or playing golf, or I don't know if you remember that. Remember that one time we were somewhere out in Sedona or someplace out in that area.
Oh, I think it was you guys were staying at the
Boulders,
right?
Yeah.
And
We had that wonderful place in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know, he made a stroke, and it was bad, and I mean, he threw that golf club 150 feet, I think.
Yeah, that was the same. That was the same. What do you want to call it? Golf round that we played, where we got those classic sayings. That one was, "That's findable."
Oh, fine. Yes, that's
Remember? Because
findable.
the Boulders course was like
that was
tee, desert, fairway,
boulders,
desert, and then green, right? And boulders, right? So there was no like woods that you go find, your ball. They would go out and hit cacti or rocks or whatever and bounce all around. So Matt came up with like, "That's findable." And the other one was when you would hit it and you would just hook or slice it off in the desert. That's when he came up with "Oh my God." That was another one.
I'd forgotten about that.
And then there was one other one that was when you would get angry, and that was the one where we all stopped and looked at him like, "What did you just say?" And that was, when he threw and all that, and he just started yelling, "God fucking shit!" And we're all like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, that was.
Yeah, playing golf with him and Grandpa Kovacs together was not enjoyable.
Yeah, that was.
That was not a fun. That was not a fun time. I didn't enjoy playing golf with those guys. You and I played golf several times together, but I was saying what was another one I wrote down? There was another story that.
Well, there's one that I think you might need to tell me kind of how it all maybe came about, if you remember, because I don't necessarily know. But all I remember is in the St. Paul house, for some reason, and I'm not, again, sure why, if it was a competition, between he and I, or it was to see how well you and Dad did, but it was, we got into stacking our Christmas presents.
Oh yes. And who had the most?
Is that what it was? Who could stack it the highest,
or count?
Or just count? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember doing that, but like I said, I don't know how it started.
I don't remember how it started either. I remember one, but yes, you would go in and you would find your presents, and Matt would find his, and you would put them in two different stacks and look and see whose stack was the biggest. I think, I don't know whether you resented it. I think in maybe a little bit, because I think we've talked about it, but part of the problem was with Matt coming back and forth so much, and he spent almost all his holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, always Christmas, but it sometimes was late. We had to wait for him to get there, and that was hard on him. It's not a resentment. It's a memory that I definitely clearly had, because I've told people that several times, where it was like, well, it sucked because a lot of times I'd have to wait on Christmas Day sometimes or whatever to do Christmas festivities. So, but it's not a resentment or anything like that. But it's definitely a story even. Yeah, I remember.
That's why I wonder if that's kind of where it came from. Was like, oh, let's see,
And later on, when he was a little bit older, and he and I would talk, and he would say something about, something, and I'd say, now listen, you have to remember that, we would put holidays on hold for you to come, so you were the center of attention, not Mike.
Right. What? What?
Yeah.
All these years, now you're telling me I wasn't the center of attention?
Yeah.
That goes right along with you actually wanted a daughter.
I did want a daughter.
Clearly. I've got this thing of where you...
I wanted a boy, but I also wanted a daughter. But Kurt didn't want any more kids.
After Matt and I, hell no.
No, that's not because of that. It was because we had, he was so into aviation that two in the back.
Oh, yeah, wait and balance.
No, we can't have a third one. There's no place in the airplane for a third child.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love it. It's that practicality that I'm so into.
Yeah. But anyway, that's okay. It's all right that we didn't have another one.
So, just so everybody knows, Matt would have been 53
today.
Yeah, 4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you were about 3 years and 8 months difference?
Yep, absolutely. I think part of the thing is not necessarily missing Matt now, but like these stories and stuff, it's actually missing the opportunities to create more stories with them.
Yes, it's very,
Right.
I don't know. It's it's hard for me to get my head around that he's not around.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about that too. It was just that, we didn't talk to him often, but when we did talk to him, it was like you were talking about your friend, the one that got you your job.
Oh, Don, yeah.
Don.
Yep.
You know, you didn't have to talk to him every day to just get a conversation
Oh yeah,
going.
on the road trip here, when we went, and it was literally like we went out to the flying field the weekend before. I mean, it's been years and years, and just it was. That's kind of how it was with Matt too.
I know the other thing I was gonna reminisce with you a little bit. It was Matt, I think, who really got you into Dungeons and Dragons too.
That's in my mind. Yeah, I mean,
because we had that computer out there on that sun porch when we lived on Lakeview Avenue, and
right.
And you guys would sit out there and play Dungeons and Dragons forever. We'd have to actually order you to turn off the computer and go to bed.
Yeah, that's still these days. Just the other night I stayed up till, I don't know, 2:30, 3 o'clock playing Minecraft, which is, I play survival mode in that game, which is basically like a Dungeons and Dragons, swords and mobs and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's still to this day. So well, I think that's a good place, probably maybe to stop here.
Sure.
So all right, everybody. So
happy road trips.
Happy road trips. Happy coffee.
And happy birthday.
Happy coffee.
Happy coffee and happy birthday, man.
Yep.
We're thinking about you.
Yep. Sure are. All right, everybody.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors.